Hey readers, welcome back to Reading Realm. I know it has been a little while since I posted a video. Stuff got really crazy. A bunch of stuff in my schedule got completely flipped around with some plans that I had and that happened or didn't happen, and just a bunch of stuff happened. It's been chaotic. And then on top of that, when I finished this book, after I finished it, I found out some stuff about the author that I was hesitant about whether I should even make this review or not. Um, because the author has allegedly been accused of some things that I definitely don't support, and if they are true, I don't want to promote this person's work. So, um, I could not find confirmation on whether or not there's been a conviction with this or anything, but apparently the author has some accusations against her relating to inappropriate behavior with, I believe, minors or people younger than her, them. I don't actually know this person's pronouns, she, her, according to the author's note. But I did have this on my list, and I did have some things to say about the book. So, with that disclaimer out there, that maybe don't support this author, this is 27 hours. And I actually was really looking forward to this book, so it kind of sucks that something like that happened, both for the people that it affected, but also because I hate it when there are books that I want to enjoy and then I find out information that taints that. I feel like an example that a lot of people of my generation have with that is Harry Potter right now, is like, can you still enjoy that as a series while also not supporting the author? And this, I think, is kind of similar in terms of I'm trying to portray my thoughts that I had about the book before I found out the information, but also it's hard for that information to not affect it. And the whole reason I kind of was curious and found out the information was the end of this book ends on a pretty substantial cliffhanger, which really makes it feel like there is more. And I looked it up to see if maybe there was going to be a sequel, and there was. But then this stuff came out, and it was apparently credible enough that the publisher canceled the second book. So there will no longer be a second book, which means that this just ends on a cliffhanger. It definitely felt intentional to have more, and I think that is also partly why I feel like a lot of the character development felt incomplete. I did like some of the characters. I thought they were really interesting. I thought the world building was interesting, but also kind of too much at once, I guess. Like, there was a lot of stuff where I think the pacing of when things were explained sometimes was a little bit confusing, because it was like, okay, I figured this out now, like 2 chapters after it was introduced, and I had so many questions about it back then. But then now it's like, oh, well, and this obviously is how it is. And so I I did feel like the pacing was a little bit interesting with like the reveal of various world building things. Um, Another thing is I don't really know how most people feel in certain situations, and for myself, and I hope for many of my viewers, I don't think you've ever been in a situation where you're like, the entire world might end tomorrow. Hopefully you haven't, because that's kind of an extreme situation. Um, but personally, if that was happening actively and I was trying to figure out ways to stop that or reduce the damage of what's happening, I feel like for me personally, the last thing I would be thinking about would be physical intimacy. I feel like I would be worried about, like, are my friends and family are okay? How do I protect the people I love? That kind of thing. Not like, oh, I want to kiss this person, or let's go up and make out in a room for 5 minutes or something. So that felt really weird to me. There were several scenes like that, and I was like, I I personally would not react that way in any of these situations. Like, that feels weird. I get it if you want to, like, oh, I need to confess my feelings for you in case we die. Like, I guess that one makes more sense. But the physical, it doesn't, for me at least, it felt really forced into the narrative, I guess. Like, I felt like there were a lot of other things going on that they should have been focusing on more, and every time that happened, I was just kind of like, oh, okay, so we're doing this now? I feel like there's more important stuff happening. But it was, like, an interesting book. I think one of the things that's cool about this book is I feel like almost every single character is queer in some way. There's a person who uses they them pronouns. There is a trans woman. There is pretty much in the main group of characters not a single straight person. There's a fully asexual person. There's some bisexual people. There's some lesbian people, some gay people. It's very diverse in terms of that, and also in terms of ability. There is a protagonist who is not fully deaf, but pretty significantly deaf, to the point that they use mostly sign language to communicate or lip reading. But they can hear the planet, or the moon, I guess. They're on a moon, not a planet. But they can hear the moon, which is interesting. But I think I appreciate that there is so much diversity. And apparently the author actually had some people, and I don't know if these are experts, if these are their friends or family or people that she knew who had this, but she did consult people about certain minorities that she was trying to depict, who she herself was not a member of that community, which I do appreciate. And even though it sounds like the author has done bad things, I do think that that is a good thing, that she was like, I do want to make sure I'm representing these people correctly. So I do appreciate that. I think it, knowing now that it was originally intended to be part of a series, makes a lot of sense why some of the pacing felt really weird. Like, when I was getting close to the end, I saw how much of the book I had left, and I'm like, there's no way all of this will be wrapped up by the end of this if I have like 10 pages left. And yeah, not everything was wrapped up, because there was originally intended to be another book. And I feel like I have so many questions about what would have happened, because the cliffhanger at the end was so dramatic. But also, I feel like it is probably a good thing that it is not being published and people are not going to be purchasing it and financially supporting the author, if she did do these things that are alleged. Because I didn't see if there was any resolution to anything in terms of like a legal case, but it does seem like it was credible enough that the publisher dropped the sequel. So that seems like there probably was a significant amount of evidence for it. I also do think there were definitely a lot of things that I wish had been explained more, because I think there were times where the author was really trying to like keep something secret in a way that made it kind of like, why is this being brought up if you want it to be such a surprise reveal later? Like, for me personally, in my own writing, if I had something where I was gonna be like, oh, I'm gonna mention this thing, but I'm actually not gonna say anything about it, I probably just wouldn't mention it. I would probably just either wait for a time when it would be okay to mention it and still have it be surprising, or I would maybe not mention it at all, or I'd find a way to justify it, like maybe a character says something that kind of just like foreshadows like, oh, there's this thing, but not like I'm gonna take a paragraph or so to like talk about this thing, but then quickly move and change to a different topic. So there were a few instances of that where I was kind of like, oh, wait, like that was kind of abrupt that now we're not explaining about that anymore or addressing that anymore. But I do think I enjoyed the book. I definitely, I know people have very strong opinions on this book now because of the author's actions, and I don't support the author's actions at all. I definitely think that is bad. But if I'm trying to separate that and just focus on the book was interesting. I thought some of the sort of social commentary of it about like what you've been told by people in power may not be actually the reality of stuff, versus like different people with different lifestyles and sort of ethics coming together and stuff. I thought all of that was cool. I thought the queer representation was cool. It kind of does suck that that is tainted now by this person's actions, because I feel like often when someone who creates media that is connected to advocacy for queer people or awareness for queer people is found out to have done something bad, especially in an intimate way, people often take that to be like, see, look, all queer people, all queer advocates, they do this kind of thing. And that's not true. There are so many straight people who do things as well. There are so many cisgender people who do things as well. But I do know that it tends to be overused as an example of like, look what they did. And I really hope that this author is not being used like that, even though I think if the allegations are true, she needs to be held accountable and do everything she can to help the people that she hurt. I don't think that people should take that and be like, she wrote about queer people and then she did this thing, they're obviously connected. I don't think that that is a good argument, because there are so many people who write about queer people or who are queer people who don't do things. So I think that's an important distinction. I enjoyed the diversity in the book, both with ableism, gender identity, sexuality, all of that, but I disagree with the author. I do think there are definitely times where I feel like it was... I want to be really careful about how I word this. I think it's really important to have queer representation in media. And I have it in my own books. I enjoy books that have that. But there were a couple of moments where I kind of feel like when I was saying earlier that there were moments where it didn't make sense for physical intimacy, if I tried to put myself into the mindset of the characters at those times, I do feel as though there might have been almost like a some sort of urge to like kind of put it in the reader's face just how queer these characters are. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but it kind of felt like that a little bit. Um, there was like a whole situation where a non human creature started asking another creature, like, how humans reproduce for a reason that I don't think makes any sense in the context. And the other character was just like, oh, yeah, they just find that fascinating, so they ask anyone. And the person that the creature was asking was asexual, so it was like kind of weird that like, why are you writing this scene where this creature is kind of demanding answers about this from an asexual character? It kind of felt like that scene didn't need to happen. And like I said, the other scenes, it's like, I don't know if that logically would be how I would react in that scenario. I think it felt a little bit unnatural. Like, they had to just remind at every single moment, like, hey, look, this character isn't straight, and they are now going to act on that. Whereas I feel like queer characters that I think are really well written, in my opinion, a lot of the times are like, that's a part of who they are, but it isn't everything about who they are. And not to say that these characters were, I think they still had stuff about them that was not related to that. But there were definitely moments where it was like, wait, oh, okay, that's not how I thought this character was going to react. And I don't know, it just felt like slightly forced in a way that I know some other books that have queer relationships didn't really have. I think having the representation and diversity is still really good, but it was so in your face at certain moments that it was like, okay, like, all these characters are queer, but do they have to be so expressive about it at this moment when I don't know if that would necessarily be how those characters would react if you weren't trying to be like, see, look, look what they're doing. They are actually queer. I don't know if that makes sense at all. But I just felt like there were moments where it kind of took me out of the stakes of what was happening, because it was like the whole title of the book, 27 Hours, the subtitle here is Hour Zero means war. So it's like there is a sense throughout pretty much the whole book, because at the start of each chapter it says how many hours are left until sunrise. And or sun's rise, technically. There are two stars that this moon has. But like, it was really weird because on one hand there was this sort of sense of like, we're running out of time, we only have this many hours left, we have to do all this stuff in that amount of time. And then but it's fine if I go make out for 5 minutes. And also, I think there were also a few moments where people started being physically intimate after sort of forgetting that they had a really severe injury, which felt weird too, because I don't know if maybe just off-screen something in the futuristic technology has insane healing abilities and just completely fixed the character, but like, there was a character who was basically like slashed across the torso pretty severely, who then later is doing things that I don't think a person with that kind of injury would be doing. and what happened to the injury? Was it healed by a reason that actually makes sense, or did you just forget later in the book that that was there? I don't know. It felt a little bit weird. Because there were little moments like that where I was like, this feels like it's got a little bit of like fragmentation from the reality that we were presented earlier in the book or something. But every time one of those scenes happened where it suddenly was like, oh, we're just gonna have like an intimate moment now, it was like, oh, well, what about the urgency though? And it kind of like pulled me out of the whole like, we're running out of time, we have to do all this stuff type thing. So it's like, oh, okay, wait. Like, I thought we were in a rush right now. Apparently, we're not. And so I think that's kind of why it does feel a little bit unnatural, because I know books and other media where there is a relationship where they're like, we might die tomorrow. We need to spend time together, like in a way that makes sense. And I think it's because it's like the battle is tomorrow. Like, we have one night left. And this is not we have one night left. It's like we are in the middle of the night where we are constantly counting down the amount of time we have, and also keep reiterating how much we have to get done before those hours are up. But also we're just going to take a little break from that to do this. Because it's like, I feel like you can't have both of those at the same time. You can't have, we're running out of time, but let's do this for a little bit. And also, like, the urgency. It felt natural and slightly forced in there, for me. But I did overall think it was an okay book. Again, I'm trying so hard to talk about the book without being swayed by what I know about the author now. It's very hard because I don't want to say too many really nice things about the book when I don't really want to be nice to the author if what is alleged is true, because I think that type of behavior is not okay at all, and I think that the type of person who does those behaviors is also not a person that I would want to interact with or say kind things about. But also, this book is what I'm here to talk about. So, I think, I will say, I really like the cover design. I think it's very nice. I mentioned that before. I don't know who designed the cover. And then the back is also cool. But I definitely had a few questions about it when I was reading it. I thought, like, some of the things were a little bit unclear. But, like, this is what I mean. They're constantly reminding you how much time is left and all that stuff. And it just feels weird that it's so urgent, but then in certain moments it's not. So I thought the overall interesting characters, not very well-paced character development in some places, but again, I think that is because it was intended to be more than just one book. I don't know if it was intended to be 2 or 3, I don't know. There were at least 2 that had been confirmed at the time the second one was canceled. But I do think the characters were overall interesting. The plot, I feel like there were some weird things with pacing there a little bit. Some of the world building I felt like could be revealed a little bit better than it was. But I thought there were some interesting messages or sort of thought-provoking things about, like, humanity versus, like, these other creatures versus these people who came and colonized a moon that already had things living on it versus all of that stuff, I think, is an interesting concept in this book and in others. And so I did enjoy that. I would have wanted to see what happened with the thing that happened at the very end, because it was relating, it seemed to imply that a thing that had been mentioned various times as a thing that had happened in the past was happening again, but I don't know if it was implying, like, oh, the exact same thing is gonna happen, or what, because they also never really fully explained that historical event either. And then there was a whole plot line kind of relating to that historical event that was being set up, but then obviously that never wrapped up because the second book never happened. So I kind of wish I knew what the plan would have been, because I would be curious what that whole thing was about. There's a lot of storyline that does not feel wrapped up at all by the end of this one. There are so many cliffhangers. And again, it was not meant to be one book, so that makes sense that it would not be fully finished in the end of this one, but it does mean that it kind of ends in an unsatisfying way when you finish reading it, knowing that whatever would have happened is not going to be something published and able to be read. But I did think it was an interesting book. I know a lot of people would probably try to just hate it fully because of what the author did. And I'm definitely not saying people should go purchase this book and support this author if what they are accused of is true. But I am saying, if I'm trying to specifically review the book with the thoughts I had before I found out all of that, it was interesting. And I wish I could have read more. And then when I was seeing if there was a second, that's when I found out all this stuff, and I was like, oh, that's not great. But I think I have rambled about this long enough. I know I kind of talked in circles a little bit. It's really hard to talk about this book. That's part of why this review took so long to record too, was because I was at first unsure if I should review it at all, but then I felt like if I didn't, I needed to at least address why, because I had said that I finished reading it, and then I had also had it on my list of books for this year. So I figured I'd just make a review, but also make it clear that that's why it's been kind of difficult. And that's also why I've kind of rambled a lot in this, is because I feel like I'm trying so hard to separate what I was thinking about originally before I found that out versus how I feel now about it, and how I feel about the author being separate from how I feel about the book itself. But yeah, this is kind of a complex situation because I don't want to highlight and platform the work of a person who did something like that. That's also why I intentionally did not say the author's name in this. If you look up the book, you'd probably find it, but I don't want to, like, announce her name. Just because I don't want to give her more attention as a person when I was here to talk about the book. I know I am kind of giving her attention by talking about the book at all, but it's complicated. I have a lot of feelings about the book. I have a lot of feelings about her actions, and I'm trying to give an honest review of the book while also acknowledging the person behind it might not be the greatest. So, with that, I am going to end this. This was kind of long and rambling, but I hope you all enjoyed the review, I guess. So it's weird to say I hope you enjoyed it when this is the situation. I don't really know how to deal with that correctly, but I hope you have been enjoying what you've been reading recently, and keep reading. Bye!